Hello and welcome to INE's CCI Service Provider version 5 Learning Path. Today in this course we would talk about OSPF version 3 path selection. Now OSPF version 3 is not different from OSPF version 2 as far as path selection is concerned. If you remember, the path selection was based on prefix length first. If the prefix length is same, it looks at administrative distance. If that is same, it looks at path type and then the metric. The path type is different for IPv4, it's different for IPv6. Again, that depends on whether it's an iOS XR or an iOS XE. As far as iOS XE is concerned, the path selection or the path type was based on O routes preferred over OIA, and then OE1 was preferred over ON1, and then OE2 was preferred over N2. This was the basic order in which the OSPF path types, OSPF does basically selection based on this order. Now, as far as iOS XR is concerned, iOS XR behaves differently from iOS XE. As per the new RFC on iOS XE, the path selection type had changed. So we had prefix length first, which is always first. If the length is same, then is AD, administrative distance. The AD is always 110, whether it's a local route or an inter-area route or external route. If that is same, as per the old RFC, it was always OIA, E1, N1, E2, N2. But as per the new RFC, it was OIA, then N1, E1, N2, and then E2. So to demonstrate this example, I have router 1, which is an iOS XR. Router 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, they are iOS XE. So here I have R2 sending his loopback, which is 1:1/128. R2 is advertising to R1 an O route, intra-area route. R3 is advertising the same prefix as an inter-area route. R4 is advertising the same prefix as an external route as E1. R5 is advertising the same route as E2. The area 167 has been configured as not so stubby, so R6 is redistributing that route as an N1 and R7 is sending that as N2. So let's look at how iOS XR does path selection. Now, since the prefix length of the route learned from all the neighbors, that's the same, /128. Prefix length is same, administrative distance would be the same, which is 110. It would then look at, before looking at the metric, it would look at the OSPF type of route. So looking back at my router, if I look at iOS XR right now and do a show route IPv6 OSPF, you would see that the route 1.1.1.1 is being learned from router 2. My next hop is basically towards R2, which is 1.12. Why is he preferring R2? Even if my metric is higher, I don't really care. Even if I go to R2 and increase my metric would not be considered for the path selection, because metric is only considered if the three attributes before, which is your prefix length, your AD, and the OSPF path type, if that is same, only then metric would be considered. Let me in fact demonstrate that. I will go to router 2 and give a high metric on my interface. So interface loopback 0, IPv6 OSPF cost. Let's change the cost to 1,000. So now my loopback has a cost of 1,000. If I look back at XR1 and do a show route, it has a cost, which this cost is going to change to 1,001 based on my cost that I gave. In fact, let's go back to R2 and verify if the cost applied. So show run interface loopback 0. So I do have the cost defined. If I go back to XR1, I should see the cost there, and he should not take the path through R3 or R4 or R5 or even R6 or 7 because O routes are preferred. Let's go back to 2 and verify why do we not have the cost. So IPv6, OSPF1, the area seems okay. Let's do a show IPv6 OSPF interface loopback 0 just to verify our cost. So I see the cost of 1000 on the interface. So XR1 should see that cost of 1000. Let's do a show IPv6 interface brief. Let's clear our OSPF neighborship, OSPFv3, process, and yes. Let's wait for the neighborship to come back up and see what cost our XR1 sees. So as you can see now, even though I increase the cost on R2, the cost is now 1001, XR1 is still preferring R2 over R3 or even R4, 5, 6, or 7, because R2 is basically giving him an O route. He is sending him an O route. R3 is sending him OIA. R4 is sending E1. R5 is sending E2, R6 is sending ON1, and R7 is sending ON2. So which one is going to be preferred? Metric would never be considered. He will always look at the path type first, so O routes are preferred over OIA. Now what happens if I shut down R2, the link to R2? If I shut down the link to R2, then R1, which is XR1, would now put the route through R3 in the routing table, because OIA is the next best choice irrespective of the metric. R3 would be the next best choice because after O, OIA wins. Let's test that. So going back to the router, I'm going to shut down the link on XR1 towards R2. So config T interface gig 0000.12, and let's shut down this interface. The minute I shut this, if I look at my routing table now, it should be now OIA in the routing table going through gig 0000.13, which is towards R3. Now what happens if the link to R3 goes down? Which one would he prefer? Now if it was the old RFC, it would be E1. E1 wins over N1, right? If it is the new RFC, N1 wins over E1. Now your iOS XZ is as per the new RFC. iOS XR is as per the old RFC, which means on the iOS XR platform, I would see your E1 winning over N1. Let's test that. I'm going to go back to my router and shut down the link 13. Shut this down and do a commit. This time if I do a show route IPv6 OSPF, I see E1 and not N1. If this router was an iOS XZ, then I would see N1, not E1. But because iOS XR is as per the old RFC, it sees E1. Now again, this is from R4. What happens when the link towards R4 goes down? This time, it would not prefer R5 because R5 is sending E2, and R7 is sending N2, and R6 is sending R6 is basically sending N1. So after E1, it is N1. So it should prefer R6 after this. Let's shut down the link towards R4, gig 0000.14. Let's shut this down and do a commit. Now if I check my routing table, it should be N1, which is through R6, the interface that goes towards R6. So it is now preferring N1. Now if the link to R6 goes down, what's going to be next? R5 is sending E2 and R7 is sending N2. Which one is preferred? E2 wins over N2. So let's shut down now the link towards R6. So interface gig 0000.16, shut this down. And now we should see it should go through R5, which is through R5 because E2 is preferred over N2. Now when the link to R5 also goes down, which is 15, it would finally go through R7, which is N2. So you see how my OSPF path selection is. It's pretty similar to OSPF version 2. OSPF version 2 is pretty much the same thing, whether it's IPv4 or IPv6. OSPF behaves the same way. It all depends on your iOS platform. So if you're running, let's say iOS XE 16.x, then it would be as per the new RFC. And iOS XR, as of right now, it is still as per the old RFC. I hope this video was informative to you, and thank you for viewing.